So Jeremy started what he considers to be his dream job, speaking of jobs, in June. Paid farmers, pretty good. Yeah, exactly. In June 2018 at Mount Layton Hot Springs Farm, and they have sheep, cattle, pigs, a large market garden, hay fields, a geothermal greenhouse heated by the large hot springs on site. He also raises and sells meat rabbits from home right now, where his personal farm motto is happy food is healthy food. That sounds good. I have two beautiful daughters, Zoe and Carly, and my 21-month-old son, Sky. I have also worked doing bird spawning, fish, wildlife, marine, and archaeological surveys for Kitselas First Nation, where my partner Maria Duncan is from. As a strong believer in giving back to the community, Jeremy has served for 3 years as a board member for the Terrace Community Garden, 2 of which he was elected president. And this year he's offering his time as a volunteer for the 4-H rabbit leader, and he's looking forward to what the rest of the year is going to bring him. Can we please welcome Jeremy?
Thank you. Not really loving speaking, but I can do it. Kelsey Weeb has actually got lots of information on the hot springs, on the historical information at the Heritage Park, and on her website there's actually huge volumes of pictures from Johnstone Estate and lots of cool information. Hope this works. Oh, there's me and my son Sky. There's a little out order. There's the original mother pool before it was developed. It's a large pool, about 100 foot across. It's one of the largest and hottest. Well, it is the hottest in Canada. It's one of the largest single hot springs in North America. This hotel was built in 1936, or no, 1929. A year after Al Capone stayed at the old one. There's Lloyd Johnson. You got him a little out of order, but there's the one. That was the original hotel, and in 1928, Al Capone actually stayed there one winter for a few weeks. Came up here dressed as a Catholic priest with a couple buddies. A lot of that original stuff all burnt down, and then in 36, with this food security thing, sorry. And in 36, with the food security, one thing that I noticed in the information I found from this is the flood in 36 wiped out the railway along the river from Kitwanga to Quinitza. And I could imagine, like now, the highway wasn't there at the time, whatever, but man, that's a lot of infrastructure to replace, and we wouldn't get anything in then. It's no trucks from Rupert and no trucks either way. We'd be pretty isolated. This is one of the just little pools coming out of the ground to the hot springs. They're just bubbling up all over the site. There's about 15 little pools, little hot spots, but they're so hot that you can, if you reach around, you can only just barely put your hand in them. Yeah, this same picture that Kelsey used, he got in when Al Capone was there. He actually wrote a song about it and everything. Lloyd Johnson got a $10 tip from Al Capone and way back then in 1928. So for a 12-year-old kid, that's a lot of money in 1928. That's the mother pool in the winter. You just see the steam rising. You don't smell it when you're driving by on the highway or anything because there's no real appreciable amount of sulfur in the springs, which is rare on a big hot springs to actually not have a large sulfur component. That's the mother pool now. It's encased in concrete with the chain link fence because it's so hot. A number of years ago, someone actually had a dog jump into it, and they got the dog out right away, but its hair all fell off and it died a couple hours later. Because the water is hot, really hot. Here's another view of it. You can see it's about 15, 20 feet deep. It's even deeper in the center. It's hard to actually see. There's the existing greenhouse. And my office is in the back up here. And in the greenhouse, there's hot springs underneath the concrete slab. and the red pipes are, it's a bunch of pipe coiled in the pools to collect the heat, and then there's little radiators to blow the heat around the greenhouse. Yeah, here's a little diagram to show. They figure just because the springs are so bubbly with gases that it's actually hot gases that heat the spring water in the ground. And the spring water that comes out is actually a potable water. It's not like a mineral water. It's actually hot, potable water, hot, drinkable water. There's been attempts at investigations on geothermal power, but the current owners, Bert and Marlene Orleans, have been kind of resistant on that because in other areas, there's one down in the States where they did that, and the natural hot springs being artesian, once they drilled nearby for power, they sucked all the ground pressure out and it killed the hot springs. So they've been a little bit against that. But I'm looking into, there's some small scale geothermal power capabilities now that are being developed in a smaller scale that I'd like to see if we can, invest in that and make our own power so we're not reliant on the grid too. There's some beds we're just planting. We got lettuce and stuff coming in the first one and whatnot. The bottom of those beds is open to the concrete slab because the slab is warm from the springs underneath it. These are the grapes in there currently. As a few days ago, they're about the size of peas on the grapevines right now. There's a whole bunch of them in there. The fig tree didn't even lose its leaves this winter, it just kept growing. And there's an avocado behind it, and it's grown. Since we put it in there last year, it probably grew about 16, 18 inches. It's loving it. Here's some plants we got started in there right now. That's a grapefruit tree. The trunk is about 6, 7 inches diameter. It grows grapefruits. That didn't grow any last year. It hadn't been pruned good in a couple of years. We pruned it this year, but 3 years ago they got about 2 dozen of the nice big ruby red grapefruits off it. Tree ripened, they're way better than the grocery store ones. But yeah, in the winter when it was really, really cold, when we had that -20, I did have to put a teeny bit of electric heat in there, just a little ceramic heater just to keep it from frosting, but that's all. But with that little picture of the spring I showed you, that's actually, let's see, I think it's in points. Yeah, back there. And I'm going to dig it out and actually pipe some more of the hot water in there and try and get a little hotter in there just with the natural geothermal. But we have the huge mother pool is kind of over here compared to that picture, and we have lots of water. That mother pool produces, they did a study in the 50s when it was kind of dormant, the government study, and they figure it produces about 6,000 gallons an hour of hot water at 89 degrees Celsius. So, that's definitely hot enough to cook because that's 192 Fahrenheit, which is well beyond well done. So, yeah, so it ranges, they figured, seasonally from about 130,000 gallons to about 200,000 gallons a day just of hot potable water. One of the goals this year is to get it, this is Goodwill's little stand out by Seven Sisters there out by Kiwanga, is to get a market stand going out there this year. These are some flowers that keep going all the time out there in the greenhouse. And the big pipe dreams are, yeah, these big gigantic greenhouses. A study was done by the government in the 80s by the Ministry of Agriculture and Food. I've been trying to get a hold of them to see if we can reactivate these studies or update them. Because they did a research then and they figured that with fuel costs on the tomatoes here, this is 82 figures, it was about 30 to 40% of getting tomatoes and cucumbers to this region. From 6 months to May to October, then the consumption of tomatoes and cucumbers alone was 95,500 pounds. And the price wholesale was 63 cents a pound for tomatoes and 67 cents a pound for cucumbers. So there's a fair amount of produce that's used in the area. Back then, I would think it's a bit more than that now. I don't know what percentage more that would be, but they figure, we could, if we produced major greenhouses, we could probably capture about 75% of the market share, according to the study that was done, with five 18,000 square foot greenhouses. And that's 3,000 cases of tomatoes in the winter. And others?
Do you have those greenhouses
No,
now?
no, this is
This is
a,
a dream.
that's the pipe dream, yeah. We have just the one greenhouse right now, which is, other things that have been proposed out there, the UVic is in 1985 as well. Most of these studies are old and no one's done anything recently. UVic wanted to do fish farming. They proposed to do some geothermal aquaculture because our water is a hot potable water, and do some temperate fish like tilapia or channel catfish or the Malaysian freshwater prawn. And they proposed to do a study then, and it just never happened. So I've been trying to get a hold of them, but all the people listed in the study are no longer with UVic either, since it's 33 years ago. But, you know, some of the other long-term pipe goals we got are, like, I'd like to work on a 0 mile meal out there. Since we have the restaurant and everything on site, we have cattle, we have gardens and whatnot. It would be possible to do steak and prawns and your side dishes with everything coming off site. You know, that'd be pretty cool, I think. And people would pay for that premium product. So, any questions?
When does it open?
Well, the study back then in '82 said it would cost about $235,000 to build these 5 greenhouses and to make $100,000 a year. So I'm like, why didn't they do it, man? Like 2 years to get your money back? Jeez. But yeah, I don't know. And the owners have also proposed in the past and asked for requests for proposals for people that were interested in maybe leasing space to put in their own greenhouse. And in profit sharing, we could provide labor, or, you know, putting greenhouses and we provide metered hot water as a utility, you know, for heat, or all these other things. But it takes other people with money and interest too. So I know person like Cam, I don't know what he pays for a square foot, but it said in that study that the return would be about, with those greenhouses, would be about $4.50 a square foot would be the return. So I don't know.
The return to the landowner or to the business?
The profit on per square foot of these 22,500 square feet of greenhouse space. Yeah. What do you?
I pay a few percent of my gross revenue.
You just pay a percentage rather than a rent.
Well, I pay per acre a little bit, and then I pay a few percent of my gross revenue as well. Yeah, but you would potentially have to charge for the value of the heat that the tenant is using as well.
Yeah, we'd have to figure out some way to value the metered water supply. But there's enough water to do, you know, a fair chunk of greenhouses, and depending on how you do it.
So, I don't know if any of these microphones are working for roving questions. Okay. You have one there? Okay.
So an earlier question today was about the effect of drought on farming. I'm wondering if drought at the Hot Springs farm is something you're talking about.
Not really. Where we are, the main mother pool is only like 17 feet above the lake height. So our water table is really like 5 feet below the ground. Everywhere you dig a hole, it's wet at the bottom of the hole. So we're not really too concerned about drought. We didn't irrigate any of our potatoes or gardens this last year, and our potato crop definitely suffered. Like, we had poor potato production because it was so hot and dry. But so this year we're going to do some more irrigation. Because the site was originally just swamp, it's just spruce and cedar swamp. Like, walk down Grouchy's Trail, that's what it looked like. And it was just bush like that before they cleared it. So it's all dewatered swamp. It's all drainage channels and fields and drainage channels and fields. So we got channels of water everywhere that we can pump onto our field. And yeah, grass, you see only the tip of the iceberg. You see 2 feet of grass, there's 12 feet underground. So the crops deep-rooted grass crops and stuff like that can reach down and find the water table. So.
Are there any questions from the room? Oh, here we go.
I'm just wondering what the plan for the Mount Layton Hot Springs, the whole farm. Is it going to continue to be a farm? Is this going to happen? What's your 5-year plan?
I've only been there since June, and I've been just playing a whole lot of catch up. The potential for that is, I think, pretty high, especially with the regional growth happening right now. The hotel, like the water park and everything, a lot of that infrastructure got it was designed with technology that the health unit at the time didn't understand and all this stuff. So it was designed as a flow-through system and then they said, no, you can't do a flow-through, you got to put chlorine in, you can't just ozonate it. And then they had to treat their effluent and stuff, and it was made into such a headache that they just closed the main pool and stuff, and went with the recession around here too. It just didn't make sense to reopen it. Bert built, there's these beautiful roundhouses that if you go inside, the one, it's all like an inside-out cedar canoe. It's all circular cedar strip, the whole entire roof, and it's beautiful in there. And he spent millions on building these buildings that are 3/4 constructed but not finished. There's in the second round building, it was designed to be like a European bath. It's got a hot spring in the center with, circular rings of concrete benches all the way around. It's all big, huge timbers, and it's beautiful in there, but it would take millions of dollars to, probably finish them and get going again as a convention center and stuff. It was originally proposed to have, a marina coming in from the lake and big hotel complex and golf course and everything, but there's been kind of push and pull from the community on whether they want it to be a big elite kind of thing. Marlene, she really is interested in food security and stuff too, and she's happy I'm pushing in this direction, but she would really like it to lean towards kind of the destination spa type thing with the hot springs and the healthy, clean food we can produce on site and all those, and kind of do a combined with that stuff. I don't know.
If you were to build greenhouses like this, would you sell to the community or anything like that?
Oh yeah.
Could the city, could you sustain the Northwest?
Yeah, they figured they could provide a good chunk of the tomato and cucumber if you just focused on those crops. They figured you could get about 75% of the market share in the 1982 study with just those 5 greenhouses. Yeah.
Just in terms of raising capital, I wonder if community-supported agriculture might be possible. If you need $200,000, can you sell $1,000 shares for a year of fresh hothouse food, right? Because it sounds like what you're saying is that it's actually not a lot to build this, and just from a food security perspective, it would be interesting to see it in more of a co-op model as opposed to a strictly for-profit where people could join up front and then have access to that at an affordable price.
Some ideas I've contemplated and tried to figure out how to work around is maybe providing some space at a reduced kind of cost, for community garden type things, or for people interested in doing that, or someone like Cam who's a producer that doesn't have the real estate himself. We got hundreds of acres of hayfield that we could plow up 5-acre corner somewhere, so someone could do big market gardens like he is, and do that themselves. It all depends on how much staffing levels we want to have too, and I'm trying to balance the workload out, because instead of right now, as Lori's dealing with at home, pigs are popping, the lambs are popping, everything, instead of having a huge workload of babies born in the spring and then, oh, we got to get everything planted, and then we got to weed and harvest everything, and then nothing all winter. I'm trying to, have it so I have pigs born every 3 months, and try and stagger things out. And with the greenhouse, the Save On presentation afterwards, I'm going to talk to him pretty seriously, because I want to invest in lighting. We got the heat for cheap. If with some LED lighting, that's our only real issue, is light in the winter to grow, because our heat is so cheap. If we can have a steady client like Save On or the markets of the restaurants and the caterers and stuff, then I can justify investing the thousands of dollars in lighting to produce food year round there.
So, are there any other questions? Here we go. There's some. Sarah?
So I think at one point, Kitsilus First Nations had intended to develop the geothermal out there. I think this was around 2012 or so, and to actually develop the greenhouses also. I'm just wondering what happened to that plan.
I know, I know a little of that. Kitsilus lands by the airport, I know they've drilled up there to check out the geothermal potential where they have the land cleared, and they do have the potential there to do geothermal with the heat of the ground there. But right around the hot spring sites, I'm not sure exactly, because there's about 1,000 acres there in that conglomerate parcels that are owned by the Orleans. So I'm not sure exactly where the Kitsilus section would be there.
Is there actually anyone from Kitsilus?
Yeah,
in the room
Willie is
that
here.
can speak to it?
Do you know that, Willie?
Okay. I mean, I have had a conversation about this. If there was somebody in the room that has like direct information that could speak more legitimately on behalf of the Kitsilus? Is anybody here? Nobody? Okay. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There was a big pre-feasibility study done. They've spent over $1 million to find out like if this is a legitimate, feasible project, and the answer is yes. It totally is. Of course it is. This is one of the best hot springs on the planet.
Yeah. Well, one of the largest and the hottest in Canada.
Yeah.
It's hot.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity, and one of the things I want to put on the wish list board, is supporting the Kitsilus and Mount Layton Hot Springs. I like the idea of maybe a co-op, a collective. I think perhaps a separate event specifically to explore how we can support the development of geothermal farming would be great. There's another group called Rural Roots to Climate Solutions out of Alberta, and they have a really cool podcast about geothermal farming where they really explore all the different ways that we can do this. And I think it's probably worth like a whole separate event. Maybe I was talking to Alexa from Community Futures. They want to do a follow-up event with us to pursue some of the economic development opportunities. And I'm sure that there might be other people in the room that would also help us organize a follow-up event to explore economic development opportunities. Okay, are there any other questions? Sarah?
Just going back, I was going to say, I know from a district Kidmat perspective, we definitely view that as a regional asset that has a ton of potential, and I believe that can be said for the city of Terrace as well as the regional district Kidmat-Stikine. And in terms of the amount of investment money that is potentially coming to the area and is looking for opportunities, I know I've spoken with a lot of people with, I guess, large amounts of capital that are specifically willing to, or would be willing to kind of investigate investment opportunities for Mount Layton Hot Springs. So I think right now there's a ton of opportunity, and obviously you'd have to find a right fit for for you and Bert.
Yeah, I think for sure with the potential for greenhouses, I think that's an easy partnership potential there. That somebody with greenhouse, big commercial greenhouse experience and connections already. If we partner with someone like that, it'd be a lot quicker and smoother getting up and going.
Okay.
I had a question on the greenhouses. On what type of plastic would you use, like going right from 6 mil to 10 mil to 11 mil, and
Right.
knowing if it's organic friendly or anything, and making sure that it's organic friendly, and giving it too much moisture might ruin your crop, or having more ventilation is more likely. Wondering what plastic would be the proper plastic to use on a greenhouse.
We're used like just 6 mil regular kind of greenhouse plastic, not the super heavy duty stuff on the greenhouses right now. The math on, you know, whether you go to like the acrylic or the fiberglass or whatever, or glass, there's different, like with glass and acrylic and some of those more expensive ones, you get like 90% of the light through. With plastic, you get like 79%. So there's some efficiencies of actually your light recovery, but you know, there's a way higher capital cost with glass and some of those other things, but they generally last longer before you have to replace them. So it takes a bit of figuring what works for your situation, I think. And we do everything not certified organic, but we try and do all organic practices out there. We compost all our animal waste and use that manure, spread it back on the fields and till it into the gardens and stuff. And we just bought 3,000 ladybugs and put them in the greenhouse to control the aphids, and yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Jeremy. We have one final question and we'll close off the session.
I'm not going to speak for Kitsilus, because that's not my place. But I'm going to make a comment, and you can draw your own conclusions from that. We are in the process now of building a greenhouse out at Gadaus. And in the process of building it, we were approached by Kitsilus asking if it was going to be an industrial greenhouse. I know that the area out at the airport is slated for industrial use, and there are a number of projects that are coming out there. Having said that, I am looking forward to what we're doing out in Gadaus, which Jeremy knows part of. We are a new group that are going to be growing our produce for our village, and that is why we came to this program, so that we could hear what you have to say. And man, I tell you, the knowledge you guys have, I don't know if I'm going to be able to carry it all. I have to back my car up here or something. But I'm excited, especially about that one out of Mount Layton. Man, if that flies, it's going to be exciting. And I have to publicly commend Daybreak Farms, because they do so much for our community. They do so much for any program that we do as a community. If more businesses were like them, you know, we'd be styling. We wouldn't be here today talking about how much food we need. Yeah, so I hope to be like them someday.
Thank you, Jeremy. Have some seeds.
Thanks. We're still waiting on our seed order.
Oh.
Yeah, we ordered.
You should have ordered from us when we were doing our fundraiser. You would have had them today. Well, okay.
Actually, one more point I wanted to make on food security. I don't think there's anyone here that does dairy other than Daybreak doing eggs, if you count that as dairy. So that's one thing about this region that I've noticed. You know, if all the roads got closed pretty quick, we're going to run out of milk and cheese, you know, like, and lots of people really like their dairy. So that's just an observation that there is no real local dairies anymore.
Yeah, 6 out of 12 people in my food skills class said their favorite food was pizza. So, you know, we need cheese.
Starting with milk and the moose, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, that was really interesting. I'm really excited to think about the possibilities there. Thank you, Jeremy.